Hey everybody, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the AD&D Battle System today. Part of it is, this is something that I've been looking back at for I guess about a year now. I've been sort of looking into the old Battle System rules, because this is a book that I've had really since it's come out. I think I bought it when I was something like 17, and it's always, when I've gotten rid of other things and moved around, it's always something that's always made it into the pile of things that I've kept. And I don't know for what particular reason. I don't know if part of it was the size of the book or what, but I didn't really play it at that age. I more had it as just a reference and something to look at. But now that I've gotten into wargaming and much more so in later years in life, it's really been applicable. I've really enjoyed looking back at it, and because of that, I'm not actually looking at getting into this like anytime really soon, but I do have sort of a stepwise approach where I'm looking at possibly getting into Battle System and exploring the rules. And I'm most interested in this book, which is the Mass Battle. So this is second edition, so they did put this out once before. There was a first edition, but for second edition AD&D, this is the second edition. I believe this one came out in either 90 or 91, and this is essentially a really nice book. I mean, the cover is probably not one of my favorite covers, but there's a lot of great artwork from the actual D&D sort of books that came out at the time. But I really like the miniatures and the pictures of the miniatures that they have. Just kind of, so here you'd recognize some of this photography from Dungeons and Dragons, but what I really enjoy are some of the mass battle photographs of the models from that time period, and there's a lot of great photography in here. One of the things that's nice about the rule set is it does use a lot of the dice from D&D, and so you oftentimes will use anything from D6 upward to D12 within the combat itself. So that's a little bit of a difference. I'm not going to go, I did talk about this in a Heresy Hump Day video within the last year. I'm not going to go heavily into this, but I did want to say that when you look back at reviews of this game, it is kind of shocking just how diametrical or just lopsided some of the reviews are. I guess everybody has a wide range of opinions, I guess, but I attribute it to some degree to the fact that this is associated with AD&D and Dungeons and Dragons. At the time, this did win Miniature Tabletop Gaming Rules of the Year when it came out. So they had some sort of award looking at all the games that came out, and it won that award. But when you actually look at a lot of the reviews of people that that have purchased this, you oftentimes will see people give it, like a C, rather than a B or an A, C plus or something like that. What I have found is that a lot of times it is based on role players, people that are into role playing and RPGs. And so the folks that oftentimes did get this book, I think, because of its association with TSR and AD&D, really had role playing in mind, and this is something to perhaps insert their characters into for a mass battle within their RPG campaign. So I think it's probably, there are, I'm sure, many people that like to both do RPG as well as miniature tabletop games. But if your intention really when buying the book is to supplement your RPG, you can imagine that if that's your frame of reference, you may not really like it if it's really an in-depth miniature tabletop game, because that's not necessarily what you've signed up for overall. And now, I will put a link in the description to a review on Beast of War. There was a gentleman who is a tabletop gamer, and actually more of a historical tabletop gamer, that had done a 3-part series on Battle System. It was used with 28mm scale, which the book talks about 25, and it seems as if the miniatures were released with 15mm. I think it's fairly flexible on how you can use it. The men are, each miniature is supposed to represent 10 men, because it's mass battle. So it's not really like, you're not looking at a miniature to represent a person in this particular game. So I think that's where probably it becomes a little bit more lenient on number of miniatures and size because you're already representing something different. But it was actually, I felt, a very good review, and it's funny, on more than one occasion, and even in some cases with folks that are sort of RPG or types, it has gotten really good reviews. But I think especially if you're a miniature gamer, in most cases it seemed as if it did much better in people's estimation than if somebody was more of an RPG sort of focus. Now, because I really love the photography in this, I've, since digging this out, really appreciated this book and having it. It's just something that I look back at and I not only want to try it, but I've really sort of appreciated having the publication from that time period. And so I noticed that there was another publication that came out a year afterwards, a year or two, and it was actually the Battlesystem Skirmishes. Now this book, on the cover, they decided to go with pictures of miniatures rather than the other style, which I think was probably a good choice. This one, I think it is meant to represent 1-to-1 on your miniatures, and I do have a lot of 28mm kind of fantasy, and again, you know, I really didn't buy this book to play it per se. I thought it'd be kind of cool, and I probably will play it at one point, but I'm not really rushing to play this, but I really just wanted to have this publication because I liked the other one so much. I really felt I'd like to have its sort of complimentary book for Skirmishes, just to be able to see the photography and to read through it and take a look at it. It is actually, I got a fairly decent copy, although the binding I had to sort of re-glue a bit, but the inside and all the photography and stuff is actually pretty good, and I got a really good price. I've been looking at this for about a year now. It also has some really nice pictures of miniatures in it. It has sections like the other book on how to paint miniatures and like what you'll need, and some fairly standard stuff. It's actually laid out quite a bit different, where they have miniatures on each side of the page with kind of profiles throughout the book. It doesn't really have the same wargaming flow. It kind of reads a little bit continuous through the book. It's done in chapters. I've not read it yet, like cover to cover. I've only kind of skimmed through it. But from the entire book, it has this sort of flow where it has a miniature and a profile for it on the side. One of the nice things about this book is that, and the other one as well, is that you can convert your Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition monsters directly, and characters directly, into your miniature wargames. And so it does feed off of the AD&D style system, which I think is very cool because it leaves a lot of room for adding things to your games. And so overall, because I've read the other book and I've not read this one yet, I really can't compare the two too much as far as the style of play. But it is pretty neat. And one of the things that there are scenarios, there's sort of a beginner, an intermediate, and advanced set of rules, just like the other battle system book does, and they include scenarios to really capture that point in the rules. If you don't want to add more advanced rules, they give you more basic scenarios as well as intermediate and advanced. And there are a lot, for folks that are into RPGs, you might feel this book doesn't have a lot in the way of spells, but if you're actually coming from like a wargaming perspective, I mean, from looking at it, there's probably over 20 spells at a minimum, if not more, which that's actually pretty good from like a miniature game perspective, I think. But also, I believe they give you an ability, a way in the game to actually convert the spells from AD&D into your miniature games. So you just have to kind of go through that process of just converting the power levels and duration and distances and things generated by the spell, and then it gives you a way of incorporating that in. One of the things that you might really like if you're nostalgic to Advanced Dungeons & Dragons is you get a lot of these tables that will bring you back to your role-playing days. And there's a feel of them within the miniature game as well. And so this is a table on turning undead, and it just kind of has that feel, which I think is very cool. And so I'm actually kind of excited at one point to try this, and it gives me an opportunity. I have some old Ralportha miniatures and old Citadel stuff too that I could use, and that it could be a lot of fun just to try it out and just to see how it works. So, lastly, I just wanted to, in going through this memory lane sort of video and just showing this sort of Battlesystem Skirmishes book that I picked up, I've showed some of these already on the channel, some of them I haven't, but I wanted to just quickly show some of my Grenadier and Ralpartha miniatures that I have that I could actually use in the Skirmishes game. Some of these miniatures I've purchased recently to augment my Old Hammer stuff because I just love the old Ralpartha stuff, and that would sort of include this Cloud Giant, Ralpartha Cloud Giant. I've also seen him referred to as a Forest Giant as well. The Giant Skeleton, I have more than one of these. I have the Frost Giant as well as another later rendition of a Cloud Giant here. So I have these, but these ones down here are all from when I was like 17 years old, I would say. And there's a lot of them that I haven't painted, and then some that I have painted for D&D RPG sort of games at the time. The thing is I have videos where I've showed some of the first AD&D miniatures, and some of them I'm not that crazy about the sculpts. They're more just nostalgic. But when looking at these, and I'll show some that are just not painted. This is from, well, let's see, this says, honestly I can't totally read the inscribing on the bottom, but it's a Grenadier, and I believe this is late 80s. And when looking at these, I actually really like the quality of these. I mean, they have definitely an old style flavor to them, but they're actually kind of nice in my opinion. And I'm thinking that although there is one that I really do quite like, I really enjoyed this miniature and I did paint him up, but I didn't really know how to paint too much then. I just tried to do my best with sort of base coating. And I may have later put an ink wash on him years later, but other than this guy and maybe even this guy, I was thinking about stripping some of the other ones and just later just repainting them, because I do quite like them. And I have just quite a few elves from this time period, and I was thinking about just picking up more to be able to play games of the skirmish games with at one point. And I do have other characters. I mean, if I wanted a human force, I have like a human fighter. And this is actually quite nice. If you look at like the plate and the way they did this, the sculpting, it's actually pretty nice in my opinion. It doesn't look like over-exaggerated in a bad way. I think that the sculpting was actually quite good. So yeah, something to just maybe have some fun with in the future. But like I said, I'm kind of looking at this as a bit of a long-term thing. I'm not like rushing into it. I have other projects that I'm going to be doing way before this, or a number of them before this. But it's something, a bit of a slow burn, kind of slow grow, let's call it, sort of project that I'm looking at doing over time. And in all honesty, I'm likely probably looking at, as far as gaming goes, doing 15 mil with the this battle system miniature rulebook rather than the skirmish at first. Even though it might be easier for me to do the skirmish one first when it comes to like my table and terrain and miniatures and things, I think I'll probably do this other one first because that's the one I'm really most interested in at the moment. So, okay everybody, hope you're having a good one. Take care.